We laughed at the human because she kept tripping in low gravity. Then we raised the gravity and realized we had been training her wrong the entire time. I am going to be completely honest with you, honorable commissioners, because at this point, what do I have left to lose? My reputation? Gone. My command posting? Reassigned to a waste reclamation station orbiting a methane giant. My pride, well, that died approximately 3 weeks, 4 days, and 7 hours ago in front of 216 witnesses, 47 remote observers, and one illegally operating bookmaker who made enough credits off my failure to buy a small moon. My name is Commander Vrel of the Corvashi Stellar Navy, former Chief Combat Instructor at Battle Academy Station Epsilon 7, and I am here to testify about what the media is calling the gravity incident, though personally I prefer the day everything I knew about warfare became obsolete. You want to know what happened? Fine. But you are not going to like it because it makes every single one of us sitting in this temperature-controlled, perfectly balanced 0.7 G chamber look like absolute fools. 3 weeks ago, I supervised the annual Proving Grounds examination. Standard protocol. 4 species, 28 cadets. 1 arena. Winner takes distinction. I had run this examination for 11 cycles. 11. I had seen Threxian berserkers tear through obstacles like wet paper. I had watched Quellan tacticians dismantle opponents with mathematical precision. I had even grudgingly admitted that Corvashi's strength, my own species, sometimes lost to superior strategy. But humans were the punchline, the comedic relief, the species we accepted into the Academy because the Galactic Council mandated inclusive enrollment policies, not because we expected them to actually succeed. Then Petrakovich moved, just once, and everything, commissioners, everything changed. Station Epsilon 7 floated in the Kiveris sector like a steel monument to military excellence, or so the recruitment hollows claimed. In reality, it was a rotating collection of training halls, barracks modules, and one cafeteria that served protein paste in 17 flavors, all of which tasted identical. The Academy prided itself on producing the galaxy's finest warriors, tacticians, and combat specialists. We had standards, we had tradition, we had a 93% success rate in producing competent graduates, and then we had the humans. The cadet class of Cycle 427 was, by all measures, exceptional. Jorik Vastrem, a Threxian, whose scales shimmered like polished obsidian, stood 7 feet tall and could bench press a cargo loader. He clicked his teeth when he was nervous, which was rarely, because Jorik was not the nervous type. He was the smash first, ask questions never type. Willix and Riss, the Quellan twins. No, wait. They hated being called twins. The Quellan clutchmates moved through tactical simulations like living algorithms. When Riss was excited or embarrassed, her skin shifted from deep violet to a pale lavender that made her look like a sunset having an identity crisis. She whispered numbers in her native tongue when she calculated trajectories, which was constantly. Then there were my fellow Corvashi cadets Brant and Tekka, built like armored transport vehicles and about as subtle. Good soldiers. Reliable. Strong enough to rip a blast door off its hinges if properly motivated. And finally, there was Petrakovich, 5 feet and 6 inches of human confusion wrapped in a standard-issue training uniform that somehow always looked wrinkled. She had brown hair pulled back in what I later learned was called a ponytail. Though I saw no tail and no pony, she hummed constantly, these strange melodic sounds from Earth that made absolutely no sense in context. During hand-to-hand drills she hummed. During weapons certification she hummed. During the lecture on proper equipment maintenance she hummed something she called old rock music, which explained nothing. In the station's 0.6 G environment, Petra moved like she was fighting through mud. She stumbled during agility courses. She overshot distances during combat drills. Once, and I am not exaggerating, she tripped over her own feet during a standing exercise and crashed into a wall panel hard enough to leave a dent. Jorik had laughed so hard his scales rattled. The day I announced the Proving Grounds examination, I gathered all 28 cadets in Briefing Hall 7. The holographic display showed the arena, a 300-meter diameter dome that could simulate any combat environment we programmed into it. Your final examination will test everything you have learned, I said, my voice carrying the weight of 11 cycles of experience. Combat proficiency, tactical thinking, survival instinct, environmental adaptation. This is not a game. This is not a simulation with safety protocols. You will face real danger, real consequences, and real evaluation by the Combat Standards Committee. I paused, letting that sink in. This cycle's environmental challenge will be a 2.3 G gravity field. The room exploded into nervous chatter. 2.3 times standard gravity meant every movement required more than double the effort. Every punch, every step, every breath became a battle against physics itself. Quillix turned pale green. Even Jarek stopped his usual preening. Petra just sat there in the back row, cracking her knuckles. Pop, pop, pop. A habit that made my skin crawl. After dismissal, I found myself in the instructor's lounge with Draxon, a Threxian combat master, and Syl, a Quellan strategy professor. Draxon was already pouring fermented Kelix, which smelled like burnt rubber but supposedly helped with stress. 2.3 G. Draxon said, shaking his massive head. The human will not last 4 minutes. 4 minutes? Syl's eyes, all three of them, blinked in sequence. Generous. I give her 90 seconds before she collapses. I pulled out my data pad, triple-checking the roster like I always did before major examinations. The human actually requested clarification on the rules earlier today. What did she ask? Draxon leaned forward. She wanted to know if there was a minimum time requirement to stay conscious, or if voluntary withdrawal was permitted. Both of them burst into laughter. She is planning her surrender already. Draxon slapped the table. I will wager 50 credits she does not even enter the arena. Accepted, Scylla said immediately. I think human pride is too stubborn. She enters, collapses dramatically, gets medical evacuation. 100 credits says she is out in under 2 minutes. They both looked at me. I should have known better. I really should have. 200 credits, I said, my pride speaking before my brain could intervene. She does not complete even one objective marker. Not one. We shook on it. Standard galactic contract style. 3 weeks later, I would realize that Petra Kovic had not been asking about surrender procedures. She had been checking if there was a points deduction for making everyone else look incompetent. The 2 weeks leading up to the examination were, to put it mildly, a comprehensive disaster for Cadet Kovic. During close-quarters combat drills, she moved like someone who had forgotten how arms and legs functioned. Shorik put her on the mat 6 times in 4 minutes, which might have been a record if anyone bothered keeping track of human failures. On the 7th takedown, she hit the padded floor so hard that the impact sensors registered a fault, assuming equipment malfunction. Because surely no cadet could be that clumsy and still be breathing. Hey, Petra, Jarek called out after the session, his teeth clicking in amusement. Maybe your species should stick to administrative roles. Filing reports requires less coordination. The other cadets laughed. Even Quillix smirked, though Riss at least had the decency to look uncomfortable, her skin shifting to an apologetic pale purple. Petra just pulled herself up, humming something low and rhythmic, and cracked her knuckles. Pop, pop, pop. Yeah. Maybe, she said with a shrug that seemed too casual. Though I did file a report about your locker room hygiene last week. Coordination seemed fine for that. The laughter shifted targets immediately. Threxians were sensitive about their molting cycles. Shorik's scales darkened. You will regret that in the arena, human. Sure thing, big guy, Petra replied, still humming as she limped toward the showers. I watched this exchange from the observation deck, making notes on my data pad. Kovic, inadequate physical performance, poor spatial awareness, possible inner ear imbalance. Recommend remedial training or transfer to non-combat role. But Academy regulations required all enrolled cadets to complete the proving grounds, regardless of projected outcomes. So Petra stayed, stumbling through weapons qualifications, nearly shooting herself in the foot with a plasma trainer, set to stun mode. Thanked the stars and somehow managing to trigger every single trap during the obstacle course simulation. She is dead weight, I told Commander Zyfex during our weekly evaluation meeting. The human integration program is a political gesture, nothing more. We are wasting resources training someone who cannot even navigate 0.6G without tripping. Zyfex, who had mandated the human acceptance in the first place, simply nodded. However, regulations stand. She participates. Fine. She would participate. She would fail. The Combat Standards Committee would see the objective data, and next cycle we could quietly reduce human admissions to 0. Then, 10 days before the examination, I made the environmental conditions public. 2.3 g gravity field, sustained for the entire examination period. Estimated duration 4 to 6 hours depending on cadet performance. The training halls went quiet. Cadets who had been confident suddenly looked uncertain. The Quellans immediately began calculating caloric intake adjustments and muscle fatigue ratios. The Corvashis started weight training in enhanced gravity simulators, though we could only push to 1.8 g safely. Jorik, to his credit, barely flinched. Threxian physiology handled heavy gravity better than most species. His odds of winning had just increased dramatically. And Petra? She showed up at my office that afternoon, datapad in hand. Commander Vrel, sir, I have some questions about the examination protocols. I did not even look up from my work. If you are requesting medical exemption, submit the forms to Station Health Services. No, sir. I am asking about the rules. Specifically, are there any restrictions on movement styles? Like if someone wanted to use non-standard combat techniques. I finally glanced up. She stood there, posture terrible as always, but her eyes were focused. Non-standard techniques are permitted provided they do not violate weapons regulations or safety boundaries. Why? And there is no penalty for completing objectives faster than projected timelines. Speed is an advantage, cadet, not a penalty. Assuming you possess any speed, which current evidence suggests you do not. She nodded, making notes on her pad. One more thing, sir. The gravity field, it is uniform across the entire arena? No fluctuations or safe zones. Correct. 2.3 g, constant. Everywhere. The arena will be the most difficult environment you have ever experienced. I leaned back in my chair. Cadet Kovic, I appreciate your dedication, but perhaps you should consider voluntary withdrawal. There is no shame in recognizing one's limitations. Oh, I recognize my limitations, sir, she said. And was that a smile? I just wanted to make sure everyone else would be operating under the same conditions. Everyone will suffer equally, cadet. Though some will suffer more than others. She cracked her knuckles. That irritating pop, pop, pop. Fair enough, sir. Thank you for your time. After she left, I noted in her file, Kovic displays unrealistic confidence. Possible psychological evaluation recommended post-examination failure. Draxon stopped by that evening. I heard the human came asking questions, checking if she could surrender gracefully. Smart, at least. He poured himself Kellex. I increased my wager, by the way. 300 credits now, says she does not last 3 minutes conscious. I should have asked why Petra was still smiling when she left my office. I should have wondered why someone facing certain humiliations seemed so calm. I should have done a lot of things differently. Examination day arrived with all the ceremony and tension of a public execution, which looking back was not an inaccurate comparison for what happened to my career. The observation deck overlooked the arena through reinforced transparent aluminum, because when you are testing cadets in more than double standard gravity, you want to make absolutely sure the viewing platform does not collapse on top of the instructors. 26 cadets, 2 had withdrawn citing medical concerns, stood at the arena entrance in their combat suits, light armor designed for mobility rather than protection. I stood at the primary observation console surrounded by fellow instructors, academy administrators, and unfortunately, Grik Vas Nam, the Quellan who ran the station's most notorious unlicensed betting operation. He was not supposed to be here, but Grik had a talent for appearing wherever credits were changing hands. Final wagers, final wagers. Grik whispered urgently, his datapad practically smoking from transaction volume. Jorik favored at 2-1. Corvashi cadets, 3-1. Quellans 4-1. Humans at, let me check. Yes, 97-1. 97-1. Seal looked offended. That is insulting. Should be at least 200-1. Market sets the odds, Professor, Grik replied. Someone placed a massive bet on the human at the last minute. Anonymous account threw off my calculations. I did not have time to contemplate gambling economics. The arena initialization sequence began. Lights shifted from standard white to a deep amber, the color we used for hazardous environment testing. Warning klaxons sounded 3 times, gravity field activation in 30 seconds. The automated system announced, all cadets assume ready positions. Through the viewing port, I watched them spread out across the arena floor. Jorik rolled his shoulders, scales rippling with confidence. Quillix and Riss moved to opposite sides, already executing some pre-planned tactical formation. Bront and Tekka, my Corvashi cadets, planted themselves near the center, immovable objects waiting to become unstoppable forces. And Petra stood near the rear entrance, adjusting her boots. Just standing there, adjusting her boots. 10 seconds. She straightened up, rolled her neck, crack, 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 and settled into a stance that looked wrong. Feet too far apart. Knees too bent. Center of gravity too low. 5 seconds. I pulled up her bio-monitor on my console. Heart rate, 72 beats per minute. Perfectly calm. Either she was pathologically unaware of impending disaster, or no, definitely the first option. Gravity field active. 2.3 G. Examination begins now. The change was instantaneous and brutal. 11 cadets collapsed immediately, just dropped like their bones had turned to liquid. Their combat suits registered the falls, and medical drones swarmed in within seconds, dragging them to the safety perimeter where gravity returned to standard. 42% failure rate in first contact, someone gasped behind me. The remaining 15 cadets struggled through the crushing weight. Every movement looked like they were walking through setting concrete. Yorick pushed forward, slower than usual but still functional, his Threxian musculature handling the load. The Quellans moved with calculated precision, minimizing energy expenditure. My Korvashi cadets advanced steadily, strength compensating for the environmental disadvantage. And Petra, she just stood there. For approximately 5 seconds she did not move at all, and I thought, here it comes. The collapse. The medical evacuation. My 200 credits are safe. Then she adjusted her stance, shifting her weight slightly, and took one step forward. A normal step, not a struggling, gravity-crushed shuffle. An actual, controlled, deliberate step. "Ha," I said aloud. She took another step, then another. She was not moving fast, but she was moving efficiently. Her posture adapted perfectly to the increased weight, like someone who had done this before. "Rel," Draxon said slowly, his voice confused. "Is the human's gravity field malfunctioning? Did her sector not activate properly?" I checked the readings. Negative. 2.3 G confirmed across her entire position. Uniform field integrity. Petra continued walking, heading toward the first objective marker, a secured container that required manual override. She moved with purpose, her earlier clumsiness completely absent. When she reached a low barrier, she did not climb over it like the other cadets were struggling to do. She jumped over it. Jumped. In 2.3 G, the observation deck went silent, except for Grick, who was frantically typing on his datapad, his skin flashing through colors so rapidly he looked like a malfunctioning light display. No, 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 this is not possible. The calculations someone is going to make. Hold on, someone just placed another bet. 50,000 credits on the human. Account trace is bouncing through 6 proxies. Who is this? Jorik reached the first objective marker ahead of Petra, using his raw power to force movement. He grabbed the container override, his teeth clicking rapidly, which meant he was actually struggling despite his bravado. The mechanism required a 10-second hold while it authenticated. Petra arrived at the second objective marker 40 meters away. She did not grab the override. She punched it. The container lock shattered from the impact, metal crumpling like foil, and the objective registered complete in 1.3 seconds. What just? Syl started. Petra moved to the third objective marker, her movements no longer cautious. She was not surviving the gravity field. She was operating in it. No, wait. She was thriving in it. She performed a combat role, came up in a crouch, and sprint jumped to an elevated platform that other cadets were struggling to even climb toward. When she landed, the platform's sensors registered the impact force, 2,400 newtons.
That was not possible.
That was not physically possible for someone her size unless, pull up her species file, I ordered, my voice sharp. Earth gravity. Now, an assistant brought up the data. I stared at the numbers, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. Earth, standard gravity, 1.0 G. Station Exelon 7, training environment, 0.6 G. Current arena setting, 2.3 G. Which meant Petra had been training for 6 months in less than her species evolved for. She had been fighting her own strength the entire time, handicapped by an environment we thought was accommodating. And now, in 2.3 G, she was still above her natural baseline, but closer to it than she had been in months. "Oh no," I whispered. "Oh no, what?" Draxon demanded. On the arena floor, Petrovich stopped humming and started running. "Commander, I am not understanding what I am seeing," Sil said, her 3 eyes fixed on the monitor displaying Petra's bio readings. "Her muscle efficiency is increasing. How is her performance improving in a high-gravity environment?" I pulled up the comparative analysis, my hands shaking slightly as the data populated across multiple screens. Because we are idiots. All of us. Complete, absolute, catastrophic idiots. Draxon grabbed my shoulder, spinning me around. "Explain, now." "Earth is 1.0 g, standard planetary gravity, the same as Corvash Prime, the same as Threxia, the same as the baseline we use for all our calculations." I pointed at the screen. "This station, Epsilon 7, operates at 0.6 g for crew comfort and energy efficiency. We have been training her in 60% of her natural environment for 6 months." The realization hit the observation deck like a concussion grenade. "The stumbling," an instructor whispered. "The overshot distances," another added. "When she punched the training dummy and it flew across the room and we thought the equipment was faulty." Sil's skin went pale violet. "It was not faulty." I called up the training logs, scrolling through months of data that suddenly made horrifying sense. Every time Petra had tripped, she had been compensating for strength she could not properly calibrate. Every time she had accidentally hit too hard, she had been fighting against an environment that made her exponentially stronger than she should be. Every stumble, every crash, every moment we had laughed at her, she had been training with weighted shackles we did not know existed. On the arena floor, the examination had turned into a systematic demonstration of human adaptability. Petra moved between objective markers like she was taking a casual morning jog, which, given that 2.3 g was still more than twice what she had trained in, should have been impossible. But it was only 1.3 g above her evolutionary baseline. For 6 months she had been operating at 0.4 g below it. Shorik attempted to intercept her at the 4th objective marker, a tactical control point worth significant scoring. In standard gravity, he would have been faster, stronger, more experienced. In 2.3 g, he could barely lift his arms above his shoulders. His muscles, adapted for his home world's 1.1 g, were screaming under the additional weight. Petra did not even slow down. She sidestepped his grapple attempt, his hands closing on empty air, where she had been a fraction of a second earlier, and swept his legs out from under him. In heavy gravity, falling was not just embarrassing, it was devastating. Shorik hit the ground with a crash that registered on seismic sensors. He tried to push himself up, scales grinding against the arena floor, but his arms gave out. Shorik Vestreman eliminated. Inability to maintain combat readiness, the automated system announced. Medical drones moved in. Jorik's teeth were clicking so rapidly it sounded like malfunctioning machinery. "This cannot be happening," Draxon said, but his voice carried no conviction. We were watching it happen, in real time, in front of 200 witnesses, and however many remote observers were streaming this disaster. Quillix managed to reach an elevated objective marker using a mechanical lift system. Smart tactical thinking. She activated the marker, scored the points, and immediately looked for her clutchmate. Res was 3 levels down, moving carefully through an obstacle field. Petra appeared on the lift platform behind Quillix. "How did she?" Silu zoomed in the camera. "That platform is 9 meters high. Did she climb?" I checked the replay. "No, she jumped. From the ground level. 9 meters. In 2.3 g." Quillix spun around, her skin flashing bright yellow in alarm. She was a tactician, not a fighter, and she knew it. Her hands went up in the universal gesture of surrender. Petra just nodded, pointed to a safe exit route, and moved on. "She is letting her go." Draxon looked confused. "Why not eliminate the competition?" "Because she does not need to," I realized. She is not competing against them anymore. She is competing against the examination itself. Grikvai's Nam was having a complete financial meltdown behind us. The betting pool just inverted. Multiple someones are cashing out massive positions. I am ruined. The human is, calculating she is favored now at 1-3. This is a catastrophe. For you or for us? Sel asked quietly. Yes, Grik and I said simultaneously. Brant and Tekka, my Corvashi cadets, had fortified a position near the central objective marker, the highest value target. They were doing well, all things considered. Corvashi's strength was legendary, and in high gravity they functioned better than most. Petra approached their position at a steady pace. Not running anymore, just walking, conserving energy, thinking ahead. Bront stepped out to challenge her. Honorable combat. One-on-one. The Corvashi way. She looked at him, cracked her knuckles, pop, 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 and said something the audio pickups barely caught. Sorry about this. 3 seconds later, Bront was on the ground. Not injured, but completely outmaneuvered, and Tekka was staring at Petra like she had just violated several laws of physics, which technically, she had not. She had just followed them better than anyone expected. Vrelo, Braxton said quietly. Your career evaluation report on the human, the one recommending remedial training. I am already deleting it. I muttered, frantically wiping files from my datapad. Good, because if the Combat Standards Committee sees that before they see this recording, we are all getting reassigned to waste reclamation. On screen, Petra Kovic completed her 8th objective marker. There were 12 total. She had been in the arena for 11 minutes. The projected examination time was 4 to 6 hours. And she was humming again. What I had failed to notice, because I was too busy watching my professional reputation dissolve in real time, was that Jarek had recovered, impossibly fast. Suspiciously fast. He was back on his feet, moving toward the central objective zone with renewed vigor, his scales shimmering with an odd luminescence that I had attributed to arena lighting, but now seemed far more sinister. Draxon, I said slowly, run a bioscan on Jarek, full spectrum. The Threxian instructor complied, pulling up the medical readout. For a moment, nothing seemed unusual. Then the deep tissue scan completed, and we both saw it simultaneously. Are those, Draxon leaned closer to the screen, are those graviton compensators, implanted in his spinal column, illegal? Completely, utterly, career-endingly illegal. Gravity assist implants were banned by galactic combat regulations specifically because they provided artificial enhancement in variable G environments. Athletes had used them decades ago before the prohibition, turning competitions into technological arms races rather than tests of skill. He is cheating, Syl whispered, her skin flushing angry crimson. That Threxian is cheating, and he is the only cadet keeping pace with the human. On the arena floor, Petra had clearly noticed something was wrong. She stopped at the 9th objective marker, not activating it immediately, watching Jarek approach from the east corridor. Her head tilted slightly, analyzing his movement pattern, the way he was not struggling like he should be. And Riss, clever, observant Riss, had also noticed. She stood near the perimeter, her skin cycling through colors, violet to lavender to pale blue, the Quellan equivalent of severe moral distress. She held a data scanner, standard equipment for tactical assessment, but her hands were shaking. She had detected the implants. She knew. The 3 of them converged on the central zone, a large circular platform that held the primary objective marker, worth triple points. Jarek arrived first, his confidence restored, teeth clicking in that nervous pattern that meant he knew he was taking a risk. Kovic, he said loud enough for the audio pickups to catch. Impressive performance. For a human. Petra said nothing, just cracked her knuckles. Riss climbed onto the platform from the southern access point, her scanner still active, data scrolling across its display. She looked at Jarek, then at Petra, then back at her scanner. Her whisper counting had stopped, which meant she had reached a conclusion, but had not decided what to do about it. Riss, Jarek said, his voice smooth. You have fought well, withdraw now, and we can settle this between champions. Champions do not cheat, Riss said quietly, her skin now solid navy blue. Determination. The observation deck erupted. Instructors shouted over each other, demanding scanner verification, pulling up regulations, activating emergency protocols. I was already reaching for the examination abort controls when the warning sirens began. Not our sirens. The arena's environmental fault alarms, gravity field instability detected. The automated system announced, its tone shifting from neutral to urgent. Fluctuation pattern irregular. Source unknown. On my console, the gravity readings started dancing. 2.3 G, 2.7 G, 1.9 G, 3.1 G. The field was oscillating wildly, and the pattern made no sense. What is causing this? I demanded. A technician pulled up the diagnostic report. The graviton compensators. Jarek's implants are interfering with the arena's field generators. They are fighting each other, trying to normalize versus amplify, and the system is going haywire. The gravity spiked to 3.8 G. Jorik screamed. His implants, designed to assist in heavy gravity, were now amplifying it beyond safe limits. His scales started cracking under the pressure, micro-fractures appearing across his arms and chest. Petra dropped to one knee, face contorted with effort. 3.8 G was beyond even Earth normal tolerance, and Riss, built for calculated precision rather than brute force, collapsed completely. "Abort the examination," Commander Zyfex ordered. "Medical teams full deployment." I slammed my hand on the emergency shutdown, but the gravity field did not respond. The implants had corrupted the control systems. We were locked out. The gravity spiked again. 4.2 G. And in the arena, Petrovich stopped being a cadet and became something else entirely. She stood up. 4.2 G should have been impossible for any of them. The human body, according to every medical text I had ever read, could not function at that level for more than a few seconds before blood pooling, organ stress, and skeletal compression caused catastrophic failure. Petrovich stood up anyway. Not easily, not gracefully. Every muscle in her body was visibly straining, her face flushed dark red from the effort of keeping blood flowing to her brain. But she stood, legs shaking, arms trembling, and she moved toward Jorik, who was now face down on the platform, his scales cracking like broken pottery. "What is she doing?" Draxon shouted. "She needs to get to the safety perimeter." The gravity spiked again. 4.6 G. The observation deck's reinforced windows groaned under sympathetic stress. Petra reached Jorik and dropped beside him, her knees hitting the platform with enough force to dent the metal plating. She rolled him onto his side, preventing airway obstruction, her hands moving with practiced precision despite the crushing weight. "She has medical training," Cell said, pulling up Petra's full academy file, the extended version we should have read months ago. "Emergency response certification from Earth's International Mountain Rescue Council. She trained in high-altitude, high-stress environments, where gravity effects and pressure changes cause similar physiological responses." Of course she did. Of course the one thing we never bothered checking was whether the clumsy human had any useful skills beyond stumbling through doorways. Petra's hands found the access points on Jorik's combat suit, the emergency medical panels. She ripped them open, strength amplified by desperation and 4.6 times her body weight, and located the implant control nodes along his spine. "She cannot be planning to..." I started. She was. She pulled a multi-tool from her belt, the standard issue equipment we gave every cadet and assumed they would never actually need, and started manually deactivating the graviton compensators. No anesthesia, no surgical precision, just raw field mechanics performed under conditions that should have killed her. Jorik screamed, the sound cutting through the arena audio like a blade, but the gravity readings started stabilizing. 4.3 G. 4.0 G. 3.7 G. Riss, still collapsed 10 meters away, used the decreasing gravity to crawl toward the platform's edge. She was not trying to escape, she was dragging herself to the emergency equipment locker. Her whisper counting resumed, calculating something through sheer force of will despite the physiological impossibility of complex thought in high G. "What is she doing?" someone asked. Riss reached the locker, pulled out a portable field damper, normally used for containing energy weapons discharges, and activated it. The device projected a localized counterfield, not strong enough to eliminate the gravity pressure, but enough to create a bubble of reduced intensity. 3.2 G inside the bubble. Still crushing, still dangerous, but survivable. "Riss is providing cover," Seal said, her voice carrying unexpected pride. "She is sacrificing her own safety to give Petra time to work." The gravity fluctuated again, but less violently. 3.9 G. 3.5 G. Petra finished deactivating the last implant node and Jorik stopped screaming, reduced to labored breathing. His scales were cracked, leaking pale blue blood, but he was alive. "Medical teams, deploy now," I ordered, overriding every safety protocol. "I do not care if the field is unstable. Get in there." The emergency airlocks opened, and medical drones flooded the arena, their anti-grav compensators screaming in protest, but functional. They reached Jorik first, stabilization fields, activating biofoam sealing his injuries. Petra tried to stand, made it halfway and collapsed. Her body had finally reached its limit. 4 minutes of sustained high-gravity operation, combat maneuvers, emergency surgery, and she had nothing left. A medical drone reached her, scanners confirming severe muscle strain, borderline dangerous blood pressure, and complete physical exhaustion, but no permanent damage. Humans, apparently, were very good at pushing to the edge of catastrophic failure and stopping exactly one step before. Riss deactivated the field damper, her energy spent, and let the medical team extract her. Her skin had settled to a deep, respectful purple. The gravity field finally stabilized at 2.0 G, as the arena's automated systems regained control, isolated the corrupted nodes, and initiated emergency shutdown procedures. I activated the examination termination protocol. All cadets, examination concluded. Medical evaluation mandatory for all participants. Results will be calculated based on performance prior to equipment malfunction. Commander Sci-Fi stood beside me, his expression unreadable. That human just saved a cadet's life under conditions that should have killed her. She disassembled illegal implants using a multi-tool and field training. She coordinated with Aquelon to create a survival scenario from a death trap. Yes, sir. And we were going to recommend her for remedial training. Yes, sir. Rel, start preparing your testimony for the Combat Standards Committee, because they are going to have questions. Many questions. I looked at the arena floor, where medical teams were carefully extracting the 3 cadets from the central platform. Jorik, alive because of Petra. Riss, honored because she chose integrity over victory. And Petra, unconscious but vitals stable, who had just redefined everything we thought we knew about human limitations. Sir, I said quietly, I think I am going to need a lawyer. We all are, Commander. We all are. So here we are, honorable commissioners, back in this temperature-controlled chamber where you have been listening to me systematically dismantle my own career for the past 2 hours. The examination results were, technically speaking, invalid. Equipment malfunction, illegal participant enhancement, premature termination due to safety concerns. We could have scrapped the entire cycle, forced all cadets to repeat next year, buried the incident under administrative paperwork. Except 216 witnesses saw what happened. 47 remote observers recorded it, and Grikvasnom's illegal betting operation had distributed the footage to approximately half the known galaxy before we could issue a suppression order. Jorik Bistrem was disqualified immediately, expelled from the academy. His family's appeals are still pending, but graviton compensator implants carry a mandatory 5-year ban from any galactic combat service. The Threxian government issued a formal apology. His sponsor withdrew funding, and last I heard, he was working cargo logistics on a mining station. His teeth probably still click when he is nervous. The interesting part, the part that made your job significantly more complicated, commissioners, was what Cadet Kovic did when we called her in for official results notification. She refused individual honors, refused. A human, who had systematically demolished every assumption we held about her species' capabilities, who had performed emergency surgery in 4.6 G, who had literally saved a competitor's life, looked me directly in the eyes and said, Riss earned this too, split the distinction, or I walk. We tried explaining that shared honors were unprecedented. She cracked her knuckles, pop, 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 and repeated, split it, or I walk. Commander Sci-Fi authorized the dual distinction. First time in Academy history, Cadet Petrakovich and Cadet Riss of Quelon 7. Co-recipients of the Proving Grounds Honor. Cycle. The Combat Standards Committee, that would be you, commissioners, requested full review of training protocols, gravity adaptive programming, species-specific environmental calibration, comprehensive medical screenings that actually check for illegal enhancements before examinations rather than after catastrophic equipment failures, and human admission standards, revised completely. We now run Earth gravity simulations for all human cadets. Turns out when you train humans in their actual evolutionary environment instead of accidentally handicapping them for 6 months, they perform exceptionally well. Novel concept, I know. The Academy's official statement called it an unfortunate oversight in environmental accommodation procedures. Unofficially, we were mortified. Completely, professionally, institutionally mortified. 3 instructors resigned. 5 more, including myself, received formal reprimands. Draxon got demoted. Scylla kept her position only because she immediately rewrote the entire tactical assessment curriculum. And me? I am here, testifying before you, because apparently, my failure is educational. A case study in assumptions, biases, and how badly things go wrong when you do not bother reading the complete species profile before deciding someone is dead weight. My testimony is complete. Commissioners, the record stands. The evidence is irrefutable. I failed as an instructor, as an evaluator, and as someone who should have known better. Oh, one final detail for your files. The Academy's new gravity combat curriculum, designed by human consultants, the Advanced Environmental Adaptation course, taught by instructors from Earth, the species we mocked, the cadets we considered charity admissions, they are now setting the standard for the entire galactic combat training program. And my new assignment, after this tribunal concludes, Assistant Director of Environmental Training Protocols, Station Epsilon 7, reporting directly to the program supervisor. That would be Director Petrakovich. She starts next month. I have already prepared my office for inspection. She sent me a message yesterday. Just 2 words. No stumbling. I think she was joking. I hope she was joking. Commissioners, I really hope she was joking. Testimony concluded.